Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Metro. My name is Seth Conerly. I'm the campus of teaching pastor, and it is great to have you with us today. I'll tell you, it's a great day to be with us as we continue in this Beyond Imagination series. And if you've been with us, what you know is we've been studying through this character study of Moses in Scripture and kind of what God was going to do in his life that was far more than he ever could have imagined. And we're kind of taking that and that parallel to your life and mine and saying, you know, what is it that God has in store for you? And for me, that's far more than we could ever hoped, dreamed, or imagined. What does that look like for you in 2020? It's a great place for us to start as the year begins. And today where we're landing, we're going to be covering, gear up, buckle up, because we got some scripture we're going to be covering tonight. Okay, it's a lot. So we're going to cruise. And so it's got some great content in here in the book of Exodus as we follow Moses at some pretty pivotal times in his kind of story and his process of developing into the leader God would have him to be. And so we're going to start off kind of bleeding over into last week, if you were with us, and we'll be connecting from there into what's next. Now, here's the deal, though. This is the baseline thing we're going to be talking about today. It's the understanding of God's plan or his will for your life and mine. And so as we have this conversation of it's beyond imagination, we kind of got to bring this plan, this will of God into perspective for you and for me. And what does that even mean? And how in the world, consequently, is it going to be beyond my imagination? Because I don't know about you, I got a pretty great imagination. I can think up some pretty crazy stuff. So if that's beyond that, I'm ready to roll, okay? And so as that unfolds, we're going to be looking at that. But here's the issue when it comes to God's plan. It's not yours, and it's not mine, and it's not in my timing either. Because I don't know if I grew up in the Hot Pocket age, okay? I don't know about you, and you're like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about that just nice, just crispy pocket of goodness that in less than 30 seconds, I can have at lava hot, melt my mouth temperature, and good to go, okay? We want stuff, and we want it now, all right? Does anybody remember of course you do, but do you remember dial-up? You're with me on dial-up internet and stuff? Some of you don't remember dial-up, okay? Do you remember where you had to set your internet and let it get rolling and go make coffee while you let it get to now it's go open Google and just type in, open Chrome, open Safari, whatever. Then it was all right, you make up your mind, I'm going to go do the laundry and I'll be back. And then we'll kind of get in this internet thing, right? Now, if you're like me, if it takes more than 3 seconds for a page to load, I'm I ain't got time for this junk. I'm out of here. This is ridiculous. I don't even need to look at the internet right now. You're just impatient. Because we've got our timing that we want stuff in. And guess what? That timing is yesterday's when I wanted it. I don't want it. I don't want to wait for it. I don't want to be patient for it. And the reality is God's timing isn't yours and isn't mine. So beyond that, what does this all add up to? If we're going to follow God's plan, if we want it to happen in our lives and in his timing, the baseline thing that we're going to have to get to a place where we can do this is what? It's trust. We have to be able to get to a place where we trust God, trust that he is who he says he is, and he's going to do in our lives what he says he's going to do. And if we extend that trust, it's then that we can get to step back and let faith weave into our narrative in a way that is just amazing. And there's nothing greater than being able to be on the other side of seeing God's plan come to completion in your life and look back over all the things that you just had to trust and realize that he had a plan throughout this whole time. Now, I don't know about you. There's a number of things to trust. I did a lot of research into this concept of trust as I was studying this. Quite frankly, even as a staff, we're looking kind of at an overhaul of our culture as a staff here at Metro. And one of the tenets that we're trying to lean pretty heavily into is this concept of trust between coworkers, between fellow believers. What does that look like, and how do we walk in that in a healthy way? And so I've been all in on this concept of trust. And for me, I'm going to be honest with you, some of you are easier to trust than others, meaning I'm not saying I trust you easier. Let me be clear. I'm some of you look shady in the back right there. That's right. Yeah. No, that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is that it's easier for you to trust someone probably than it is somebody else in here for them to trust somebody. Why? Well, there's a number of reasons. Some of us are just innately people who extend trust. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little bit that way. I extend trust to a point of what's known as being very gullible. That's where it kind of of trust and gullibility come into effect. I'm one of those people that if you want to surprise me, just do it. It's going to happen. Like I will not, like you could be saying the plan to surprise me in front of me. But like, what were we talking about? And they're like, we're talking about surprising you. So I was like, what? And then like, you just surprised me. And I just completely catch me off guard. I'll give you an example. Whenever I was like, what is the one time that like birthday wise, your parents are probably going to do like of all the years that you're growing up that they're going to do a surprise birthday? Anybody with me on that? Sweet 16. Like that's the one that they're probably going to do a go-to on the surprise birthday party. My 16th's coming up. We got nothing on the calendar. We've always had a birthday party of some kind up to that point. There's just nothing. And I'm just like, oh, whatever. I don't even think twice about it. And we're cruising. And then my buddy goes, hey man, one of these new X-Men movies are coming out. I'm dating myself a little bit. One of the original X-Men movies, like way back, like right when they were like, who's this Hugh Jackman guy? Yeah. And so we were like watching, we were going to go. He was like, do this. And as y'all know, I'm very much a nerd. And so I was all about it. Like I was like, let's do this for my birthday. You, me, we're going to the X-Men movie. And so we're driving and he does this whole deal where he goes, hey man, here's the deal. My parents are at this event and I got to swing by and get some cash for the movie. So we got to go by there and get it. And then we can head on the movie. I was like, absolutely. Let's do that. Cause we need money for the movie. And so we pull in, there's cars everywhere, but it's an event, right? That his parents are at. So surely it's just for this. And we walk in, the lights are out and I'm like, this is weird. Like, this is like, did they have a power outage? What's happening here? And then all of a sudden the lights come on and like 100 of my closest friends and people are standing there and they yell surprise. And my first inclination was, there's a lot of people I know at this event for his parents are at. Like, that's weird. And like the lights, like, why did they yell surprise? And I kid you not. And I was like, it was like all of a sudden it started to sink in and I turned to him and this is horrible, okay? This is a horrible thing to admit. I turned to him and I was like, wait, are we seriously not going to X-Men? Like that was where I landed. Yeah, it wasn't that my parents did this amazing thing for me. Like I was just like, oh, I mean, this is good too. Yeah, you know. But I was gullible. I just didn't even know. I was very much trustworthy. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're not that way. Maybe you're a person who's like walls up. You know, you're sitting there, you're like, did you know that people are out to get you, Seth? That's what they are. All of them. All the peoples. And so if you like lower that wall, guess what they're going to do? Knife you. That's what they're going to do because that's what people do. That's how people work because people are horrible. Like that might be where you're at. You might need a hug, first off, can I tell you that? But at the end of the day, you might be a little bit more apprehensive. Now, there could be a number of reasons for that. It might be that you've been burned a number of times in the past. A lot of stuff's happened that's made you apprehensive. Whatever it looks like, though, trust is a very good thing that we need to have balance with in our lives, and especially as it applies to our walk with God. So let's dive into this and see some different things we've got. Now, I found some fun stuff about trust as I was researching this. So here's the deal as trust in social media and the way businesses work, they've recognized that trust has now become a part of the way social media works and plays out for them in their business. So here's some interesting statistics for you as it applies to trust and social media. So 92% of consumers say they trust earned media such as social media, word of mouth, recommendation from friends and family above all other forms of advertising. So if you see an advertisement on TV, you're not going to trust it. But if your buddy shares this product on social media, you're going to be far more likely to go, man, I might need to check that out. You know, Bill said that's a good one to go with, so I'm going to go that route. Next one, 90% of consumers trust peer recommendations, which ties directly into that. 85% of customers expect, this gets interesting. 85% of customers expect businesses to be active on social media. They expect 85%. That means the majority of you in here, if you went to a business and you're like, they don't have a social media, you'd be like, I don't know if I trust them that much. That's a little weird. I don't understand that. It's 2020. What are they doing? I mean, things like that. And honestly, that's why we as a church, as an organization, try to be active on this. It's not the reason, but it is a factor involved. We want to be a communication out to who we are, what we stand for. 83% of consumers say it would be important to read user-generated content before making a decision about banking or other financial services. 82% of consumers trust a company more if they are involved with social media. Not just if they're on it, but if they're involved, meaning they're updating regularly. It's not just they have a page, it's that they are constantly posting on that page. 77% of online shoppers use reviews to make purchase decisions. And here's an interesting one. 77% of consumers say they are more likely to buy from a company, be a part of a company, extend trust to a company if the CEO uses social media. So if the CEO does that, then you are going to be more likely to trust it. So just get ready. I'm going to have Paul doing a lot of Facebook Live videos now. That's what you got to gear up for. That's what I'm going to push him to. Yeah, absolutely. No, but like this is reality. It's whenever we see those things, it's people putting themselves out there, communicating things. It's when your friends and family are sharing things and connecting that you see that. When you go to a place and there's a Google review or a Yelp review and there's like 1 billion 5-star reviews, you're going to be far more likely than the one that was like, there was a roach in my food. Like, and you're like, we're probably not going to go there tonight. Yeah. Whatever that looks like, you're kind of going to lean that way. If you're anything like me, this is how I go across Amazon. I don't trust a product on Amazon at all unless it's pretty much 4 to 5 stars. I don't know if you're like I am with that. I just don't. I literally, when I go to search for something, go search filters, I click Prime, and then I click 4 stars and above, and I filter out the rest. I don't even want to see it because I want stuff that's dependable, that's trustworthy. We're that way about those things. Now, here's an interesting thing that I stumbled across. Really cool. This might be the one thing you kind of walk away with. If it is, it'd be a pretty powerful tool. Did you know that there is an equation for trust? There's an equation. Literally like this plus this equals this, and that thing is trust. And if you can have these things at play, understand the balance necessary for them in your life, then you will find yourself as being a trustworthy person. Or if other people you know have these qualities, you'll understand why they are trustworthy. So here it is. And so we'll put it up on the screens for you. It's this. T for trustworthiness equals credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over self-orientation. So let me break those down while you're looking at that. So obviously we're trying to find out what's trustworthy, what's this trusting factor, and how do we do this? So let me break each of those down. Credibility is your words. Are they truthful? Are they accurate? So I'll put myself on the chopping block here when it comes to this. As a teaching pastor, when I come up here, are the things I'm saying about Scripture accurate, or are they things I'm just pulling from thin air? And the hope is that if I'm going to be a reliable communicator, that they are in fact credible things, credible information about God's Word. Or is it people in your life? Do you have people who like say all these things and know everything that they seem to come in contact with, but are they just speaking? You know that friend you've got, those people you've got in your life where they just say stuff with confidence and you walk away and you're like, was that even real? Like, was that accurate? Or they just make that up and say it real confident? Like, I don't even understand. And is the credibility attached to their words? Reliability, it's actions. This is actions oriented. Are they dependable? Are they even predictable? Meaning, Taylor and I were like working all these out if we were like playing different narratives as we were talking about this. And so credible is like when my wife comes to me and she goes, "Hey Seth, did you go to the store earlier like I asked?" And I go, "Yes." If I went to the store, then I'm credible and she can trust me, right? That's the first part of the equation. I'm credible, and that's established. And she'll know that pretty quick because she's the one that made the list. So if the stuff's in the fridge that's supposed to be there, boom, I'm credible. But the next step up to that is reliability is the action point of it. Did I follow through on that, right? It's not just that I said it and it was factual, but was I dependable to go do it at all? It's an actions versus words. The final one, and studies show that this is actually the most important one of these three, is intimacy. This is security. This is discretion. This is empathy. It's when you're in a conversation with somebody and you know, it's those people you trust, right? When you say this to them, you know it's not going anywhere else. People who are on my team here, when it comes to work, one thing they know that I will always talk about, and it's kind of a goofy thing, but I always say this, when we enter into a moment that's very much kind of a trust-oriented moment, it's not leaving this room, I go, we're going to deer camp right now, is what I say. And I learned really quickly that was another thing from my redneck past. It's something that you Midwesterners know anything about. So let me elaborate. The deer camp friends, is your cousin Tito owns about 30 acres down in Mississippi where you got a tin shack that you sleep in sleeping bags on and shoot animals during the day. Like, that's what the deer camp is, okay? That's all it is. You got a buddy who owns some land. You got a cousin. You got that third, fourth, you going over there. We're going to shoot some animals, whatever it is. Whatever's in season, really, is what we're up for. And we go take care of it. And what it is this. It's what happens at the deer camp, what? Stays at the deer camp. Some of you been to Vegas. Okay. Yeah, that was a test. Yeah. But it's what happens at the deer camp stays at the deer camp. So I say when those meetings, I go, look, we're going to deer camp. And they know that means we're going into a moment of this intimacy, this trust, this empathy, where it's a safe space. It's not going to leave this place. But here's the deal. It's divided by self-orientation. Why is that? Because it means this. And so self-orientation is the thing that can really degrade, get rid of, destroy the trust that you could have with somebody. And self-orientation means, who are you caring about in these individual interactions? Is it you focused, or is it the other person focused? And when you get to a place where you're you focused, you begin to destroy trust. Now, there's two ways that self-orientation can manifest. It is selfishness at its core. That's literally like, I just don't care about you. I only care about me and whatever benefits me. And so in all of that, you're not worried about giving them facts. You can just lie to people. Who cares? Because it's just whatever I can get out of you when I need to get it out of you. You don't need to depend on me because I got other stuff and I'm not worried about you and I've got my stuff. Intimacy, I don't really care. Like, whenever it's advantageous for me to say the thing you told me in private, I'm going to say that thing then, because that might socially elevate me, or it might promote me in a company if I kind of stab you in the back, or blah, 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 blah. I don't care. It's me oriented. But the other one is this, and it's the one we're more susceptible to if we're not careful, and it's self-obsession. Meaning this: you're worrying all the time what others think about you in any and every instance. If you get to a place where you're so worried, what are they thinking about me? Those insecurities that just seep in. And we all have struggled with this to some level at some point in time, but it can get to a debilitating level that this self-orientation can get to a place that it bleeds into these other things. So are you focused? Does it feel like you're focused on you? Like, here's an example. If you've got a friend who's got all these struggles, and every time y'all come to hang out and you want to have this intimacy in your friendship, you want to have this reliability, credibility, but all they ever do is talk about them and their problems. They don't ever inquire about you. They don't ever ask about your family. They don't ever ask about, it's just my world is coming apart. Let me just tell you, in that relationship, what does it become? Very one-sided. And there's not this mutuality of trust. And studies have shown that this balance is very necessary. Now, here's what also studies have shown. That there is a third one of these things on the top that we think is supposed to be up there. And it is the one we use the most, but it is the least likely thing for people to trust you about. And it's this: expertise. The way that you and I tend to try to lead with trust, especially if you're in kind of a team-driven dynamic or at work or places like that, you lean in with, I'm the expert. Let me tell you why this is the way this needs to be done. This is all the reasons why. This is what's up. I know, me, this is what's up. I'm credible. Believe me, trust me, know me. I'm kind of awesome. Like, that's the way that goes. And the irony is it's the least effective, but it's the one we tend to go to the quickest if we're not careful to. Parents, you want to know why your teenager doesn't trust you sometimes? It's because you go down the expertise road and you skip all three of these. I've just been there before. I know. If you just trust me, I know. The problem is they're looking for you to be credible, reliable, and intimate, and they're not looking for your expertise. And those are the things that create this dynamic of trust in a relationship with somebody. Spousal stuff. Man, we could sit here all night and I could just put instance after instance on this bad boy and you would see it pan out in instance after instance after instance. Trust is something. And here's the deal. There's three things. There's a lot of things you got to do to keep in balance to have trust. There's only one thing you got to do to mess it up. And that's make it about you in a selfish context. And you can undermine that bad boy in 2 seconds. And in any of us who have found ourselves in a betrayal situation of trust, we know that that is extremely difficult to build back up. It's as if somebody took a piggy bank we've been storing all these things in and just shattered it. And you don't get to just put all of the coins back in. You've got to one thing after the other slowly fill that bad boy back up. So the question then, as we apply to what we're talking about today is, do we trust God with our lives? With the plan he has for us that's supposedly beyond imagination? Do we trust that it's good? Oh, he's got a plan to prosper us and not to harm us. A plan for a hope and a future. Just tattoo Jeremiah 29:11 on my arm. That's a go-to verse for us. But is it words, or is it something you truly cling to in the moments of desperation because you believe and hold to the fact that your God is worth your trust? So we're going to be in Exodus 4, starting in verse 10. So you can go ahead and turn there. But while you're doing that, this is kind of the baseline hypothesis I want us to walk away from, that we're going to be working from. Everything we're going to be learning in this passage is going to speak into this takeaway, bottom line, if you will. It's this: if we trust God and are obedient to his calling, then in his timing, we will see his plan fulfilled. If we trust God and are obedient to his calling, then in his timing, we will see his plan fulfilled. And we are literally going to look at this overarching narrative of Moses' life and see moments where he's finding it very difficult to extend trust, but we're going to see God's plan play out. So let's dive in. Exodus 4, starting in verse 10. Moses said to the Lord, now, understand, this is, if you were with us last week, this is part of what we even read last week. Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I've never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I'm slow of speech and of tongue." So what's happened is Moses has had God appear to him through this burning bush. He's been in the desert for 40, he's getting old, guys. He was 40 years old when he went out into the desert. He was 40 years out there being a shepherd. He's 80 something years old. And God's like, now's the time that I'm going to do the biggest thing in your life. Look, there's some of you in here who are like 60, 70, maybe even 80. If God appeared to you in a burning bush tomorrow and said, "I want you to lead all of the Christians in St. Louis," would you be like, you'd be like, "I don't know, God. I retired. I'm good though. I'm good. I got my shows. I got my programs, and I got my grandkids, and I'm good. Thank you though." Wow, big honor. Why don't you get that young hyper dude that gets on stage and have him do it? This is the scenario. God's appearing and saying, "No, you're the guy. You're going to do this." And in this moment, Moses is starting from a posturing of what? Insecurity. He's posturing himself just like we talked about a second ago. It's self-obsession. It's this looking at himself and how he's inadequate. He doesn't believe he's trustworthy. He doesn't believe it at all. And therefore, he's acting in a way that could potentially cause him to not be worth trust. And he's certainly not by proxy turning that around and extending trust to the almighty infinite God of the universe and saying he's bigger and he probably knows. Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I've never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you've spoken to your servant. I'm slow of speech and tongue." There's 3 instances throughout the next couple of passages when he references his speech as not being up to par. The Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths?" How do you argue with that, by the way, when God turns to you? You're like, "I can't speak good." He's like, "Who gave you a mouth?" He's like, "That's a good point." "Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." Now, there's 2 different kind of thought processes, and Paul alluded to this last week. And when it comes to Moses' speech, specifically, he references himself 3 separate times about being just not good at it. He's like, no, I'm bad. I've got issues, to the point that many historians and theologians have speculated he might even have a full-blown speech impediment. However, Stephen in the New Testament looks back in the book of Acts and says he was mighty of speech when it talks about his training and stuff. So we're kind of in a conundrum of, okay, well, was it A, that he's sitting here saying, I actually have a full-blown speech impediment, or B, that he was mighty of speech, but he was just insecure and didn't want to be the guy? The truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter. In either scenario, Moses is going, I'm incapable. My insecurities and my inabilities and who I am is not enough. And you through me is also not enough. So thanks, but I'm good. So regardless of the situation, he finds himself here questioning and not depending on God and God's plan for his life. He's not extending trust to God at all. Even when God's like, hey, credibility here. I'm God. Who gave people mouths? Me. Additionally, he shows Moses all of these signs and wonders. If you remember from last week, he goes, show these and do these. And Moses is still struggling, as we're going to see. So what's our first point? It's this: trust God's plan even when we don't feel capable. And that's one of the most difficult ones. Because if you've entered yourself into a place, you have undercut and you are destroying your ability to feel as if you are worth being trusted. And you're destroying your ability to be trusted when you go down these roads of just mass self-deprivation and insecurity. Especially when it applies to God. Why? Because who are the people characteristically throughout Scripture that God tends to use? Can I ask you, is it the flashy knight upon a steed that comes just down into the valley and then just slays the dragon? Is it this paramount king who walks down and bejeweled and crusted? Very rarely. And even the kings he does use are sinful and adulterous. Lecherous kings. The people he uses are debilitated. Whenever he goes to, when Jesus himself comes to earth and is raising up the disciples to lead what is the faith you and I live by, who does he choose? He chooses fishermen and tax collectors and like ex-prostitutes and stuff like that. And he's like, hey, these are the people who are going to, and the people are going, I don't know if you know how like religion works, but like they're the ones we're not okay with. Like that's how that works. And he's like, no, it's not about where you were. It's where you're going and in whom you are following. And he says, stop here, turn and follow me to each of those people. And guess what they did? They stopped where they were and they said, no more to my past. My future is Jesus. Is that your narrative? Or are you getting to a place where you're going, I don't think God can use me? Or are you so far gone, you're going, I don't even think God can save me. I've got so much darkness in my past. I've got so much inability to be this good Christian that I don't think I'm up to snuff. And you are beginning to not trust God because you just don't feel capable. It's not in that moment even that you feel like he's untrustworthy. You just don't even believe in yourself. Proverbs 3:5-6 says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Underline own understanding if you've got your Bibles to there. I know I got you there real fast, so when you catch up, go there. In all your ways submit to him and he will make your paths straight. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. It does not say that the power of God is made perfect in the strength at which you are capable. It says quite the opposite, my friend. His strength is made, not his strength is made better, not his strength is made, cool, better, whatever, than you a little bit. It's perfect in your weakness and in mine. So as Moses looks at himself, he goes, I'm just not capable. And in saying so, he said, and I don't trust that you can do this through me. Because I'm broken and I got nothing to bring to the table. I'm an 80-year-old shepherd who murdered a guy and had to run off into the desert. I used to be a prince of Egypt. I was pretty hot to trot. If you'd come back and this bush would have shown up when I was like 25 to 30, man, I was cruising. But I made that one mistake that changed the course of my life, and I'm too far gone, God. Sound familiar to you maybe in your life? I did that thing, and it's reverberated throughout my existence, and there is no going back, false. You know, when I look back over, it's an ironic deal. When Moses talks about speaking and speech, I think about myself. I obviously, as a teaching pastor, you think about these sorts of things and put yourself into this narrative. And so as I'm looking at this, I thought back over the first time I ever gave a speech of any kind ever. Can I tell you, and I've talked to my family about this before, and they were like, yeah, absolutely, that was the case, which I was like, you didn't have to agree with me on this one. But I look back at myself as a kid around the time that the first time I ever spoke in front of people happened, and I was not particularly impressive by any stretch of the imagination. Can I be real with you? Like, I was not working with much. Like, there was nothing about me that you walked in a room and you were like, that kid right there's got some potential, fellas. Anybody else? Yeah, let's go after him and see what he can do. Like, there was like 15 other kids that were like them, and they were like, who's that kid again? They're like, we're not really concerned. He's got a weird bowl cut and a lot of Umbro stuff going on. Leave him over there playing with Pokemon cards. And so, like, yeah, so you're not looking at me. But there was a guy who was a teacher of mine, and his name was Brett Lorbach, and Brett came to me at one point, and he said, hey, Seth, here's the deal. I want you to run for chaplain for Junior Beta Club, for like our Junior Beta Club. And I was like, I think that's a bad idea. But I mean, you know, I don't have anything going on that Tuesday morning. So like, you know, whatever. So I go and I get the little chaplain deal, whatever. But then he goes, here's the deal. I want you to go run for state chaplain for the state of Mississippi. I was like, hey, Brett, there's like 30 kids in my classroom, just so we're clear. I'm from nowhere. There's a lot of other bigger schools out there. And also, what you just kind of told me as well is I have to give a speech in front of 2,000 people. He was like, oh, yeah, you got to do that. And I was like, hard pass on that. Like, that sounds horrible. I'm like 8 years old, 9 years old, and I don't want to do that. That sounds like a nightmare. And so sure enough, he begins to encourage me. It's amazing when you can get past yourself and begin to lean into when other people believe in you. And I didn't think I had anything to bring to the table. And I stand up in front of these people. I remember like it was yesterday. I was petrified. And I put my green 3-ring binder and the speech that my mother wrote 90% of. And I began to read through quivering lips in front of these people, my whole body trembling and quaking in fear. And I didn't look up once. All I was doing, and I was like, yeah, and I'd like to be your chaplain because I think Jesus is pretty top notch, and we need to like him. Anybody? Amen? Nope, nobody? Okay. And I just inched through this thing, and it was bad. Like, it was real bad. Okay. And I don't know if the other options were just worse, but I won the thing. It made no sense. Like, they voted and I got it. And I was like, I had also, P.S., accidentally chopped my sideburns off up to here before we went out of nervousness. I was like, I got to get these things shaved. And I was like, they keep going away. What's going on? Like, and I created the fade. It was amazing. And it was just not a good time. And God was working in ways I didn't understand. There's a guy who's a pastor of a major church now who happened to be the little inspirational speaker that weekend. And he came up to me. He goes, I see something in you. Don't give this up. Keep pursuing it. God's got a work he wants to do in you. I'm like, he doesn't, but thank you. Nice. And so you fast forward time, and as practicing and getting into place and God orchestrating and his plan coming together, I stand here and I do this for a living. Oh, wow. That was was not looking for that response, but thanks by all means. If you want to do that anytime, by all means, it just makes me feel great. My mother's with us today. Vandalia did not hear that, but she yelled out, and you have sideburns now. Yeah. Glad when family can come and visit. Yes, I do have sideburns, and now I have to get back to this. It makes no sense. why God would use a little bowl-cutted, weirdo, nerdy little kid. But he did. And he does. And I have a feeling that there's a plan there because I've seen it. And although it doesn't make sense, and although I remember vividly being that terrified child, I now get to look back because of extending trust and having faith and see how God orchestrated his plan. I didn't walk in front of that stage the first time and step into his plan and was perfectly prepared, perfectly capable, and just this amazing orator. I was awful. But in his timing, he did great things for his purposes and his glory, not because of anything I bring to the table. Exodus 4:13. But Moses said, "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else." Round 2. Keep in mind, he just said, not me, send someone else. The Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, "What about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He's already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with him." So God gives him this parallel. Look, you're going to be like God, meaning you're going to be this representation of my power as you do these miracles, and Aaron's going to be the mouthpiece. Now, this is the weird part right here, okay? And it's a little bit of a bitterness in our mouth when you get point 2, but it's this. If we refuse to trust God, then he may use someone else. Technically speaking, God does not need you to accomplish his plan. And if you notice this, God walks into the equation. Now, he's all knowing and he knows what's coming, but he still gives Moses this option. He says, "I want you to be the mouthpiece. I want you to do all this and speak before the people and do mighty things for me and all this." And Moses continues to disqualify himself. Not me, not me. And God eventually goes, "Okay, not you." And he says, "Aaron, your brother Aaron, he's going to be the one who speaks." Now, does that mean that Moses' life just devolved into nothingness and he went to the side and he never had anything do anything through him? No, we're going to see this narrative play out. But God didn't need Aaron to come in and speak. God could have spoken just as powerfully through Moses because that's the God you and I serve. So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to allow those moments where you are going to slip into your insecurity to disqualify you from stepping in to the beyond imagination of the plan of God that you want for your future? Because he might use someone else. Doesn't mean that your life's over. Doesn't mean he can't do amazing things in your life moving forward beyond that. Just means it'll be different. And you could have. Here's the deal. How many times have you been in a scenario where that thing that you did in the past has held you back? And you were at the cusp of giving into the Lord, right? Maybe this is the 3rd, 4th time you've come to some kind of church service in 4 to 5 years. And every time you come to one, you know that you could give everything over to God. You could trust him and extend that trust. And you could kind of get things the way that you know they need to. But you just don't let it happen. I'm too dirty. I got too much junk going on. And you just let yourself writhe in it for the next 3, 4 more years. You could have had those 3 to 4 years. But you stepped out of it. But the beauty of this is that it's never too late, as we're going to see play out in Moses' narrative. Let's read. Exodus 5:6. That same day, Pharaoh gave this order. So we're kind of going forward into the next chapter. Moses has now gone to Pharaoh. And he's saying, "Hey, you need to let my people go." And Pharaoh's like, "I'm not a fan of that. I don't really want to do that. They're slaves and they do a lot of work for us. So how about you leave? Who are you again?" And he begins to do some pretty rough stuff to the Jews that are enslaved. That same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and overseers in charge of the people. "You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. As they made these mud bricks, they used this straw as kind of a fortification to kind of hold it together, which made it easier for them to make them. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Make the work harder for the people so that they keep working and pay no attention to the lies. Then the slave drivers and the overseers went out and said to the people, this is what Pharaoh says. I will not give you any more straw. Go and get your own straw wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced at all. So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble to use for straw. The slave drivers kept pressing them, saying, complete the work required of you for each day, just as when you had straw. And Pharaoh's slave drivers beat the Israelites overseers they had appointed, demanding, why haven't you met your quota of bricks yesterday or today as before? Then the Israelite overseers went and appealed to Pharaoh. So these are the Israelites that are overseeing all the people, kind of their officials. Why have you treated your servants this way? Your servants are given no straw, yet we are told, make bricks. Your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people. Pharaoh said, lazy. That's what you are, lazy. That is why you keep saying, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord, referencing what Moses and Aaron had said. Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks. The Israelite overseers realized they were in trouble when they were told, you are not to reduce the number of bricks required of you for each day. When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them. So understand, they just had a really bad meeting with Pharaoh. Things have been going bad. They're getting whipped and beaten. Moses and Pharaoh showed up out of nowhere, all right? These are not guys who've been endeavoring alongside them. Moses has been gone for 40 years, and he shows up. He's like, let my people go! And this is I'm with you guys. My name's Moses, by the way. We're going to tell this Pharaoh guy that he needs to stop being so rough. Anybody with me? And then yeah, we'll get out of here. God's with us. I can turn the staff into a snake. Pretty cool. And in that narrative, Pharaoh does not yield, and he really drops the hammer, and the people are feeling it, and they are not happy. When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them, and they said, may the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. So Moses has shown up with Aaron. Their intentions are pure. Everything they're wanting to do is for these people, and it is through the calling of God Almighty. But it is not looking good. And the very people they've come to save hate them. Point 3. Trust God even when everything seems hopeless. Whenever nobody's listening to you, when the people you care about and you're trying to lead, when you kind of get your life back together, but you go back to those other people and they go, I don't believe you. I don't think that God's come and saved you. I don't think you can make any steps towards this health. What in the world? Who even are you anymore? What are you talking about? When you try to do the right thing, but people are trying to just knock you back, you trust God. This is when things in life don't seem like they're going your way. When you're doing all the right things, but for some reason, everything's falling apart. People you care about are sick, dying. You're losing your job. You've got family members who are angry with you. Do you still trust God's plan and his promises? Exodus 6, verse 6. Therefore say to the Israelites, and this is when God kind of speaks to Moses and Aaron and gives them a word to go back and speak to them and talk to them in reference to all this. Therefore say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm, and with mighty acts of judgment I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. And I will bring you to the land I swore with uplifted hand to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord. Moses reported this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him because of their discouragement and harsh labor. So he's gone back to the people he's doing this for and he cares about. And they go, cool, you can leave. We don't care. We don't believe you. Then the Lord said to Moses, go tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites go out of his country. But Moses said to the Lord, if the Israelites will not listen to me, why would Pharaoh listen to me since I speak with faltering lips? 4, be careful not to fall prey to your insecurities when things seem hopeless. That hopelessness we just talked about, when everything's falling apart, it's all collapsing down. What's the first thing that's going to come to the forefront? Your insecurities, your inabilities, your doubts. Can I trust God? Am I strong enough to make it through this? I don't think that I am. Well, you're not, but God is. I don't know. God just, if he's loving, bad stuff just wouldn't happen. Really? That's how that works? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we get into this insecurity driven, we get angry, we get frustrated, and we begin to block out the one who could help us the most in the midst of our trial. As the narrative continues, it's interesting. God continues to tell Moses and Aaron what to do. And then what is one of the most popular instances throughout this story occurs, and that's throughout Exodus 11 and 12. It's that the plagues come. And Pharaoh's heart is hardened time and time again, and there's 10 total plagues that happen. But for the first 9, every time a plague happened, Moses and Aaron would go back, set my people free, let them go. And Pharaoh would go, no, I'm not doing it. All kinds of horrible stuff, destroying of crops, all kinds of boils and craziness, blotting out of the sun, frogs, locusts, all these things happening. And he's like, no, get out of here. I don't want you. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to see you. And before the final plague, he even says, depart from me. I don't want to see you in my presence again. And the final plague comes, and Moses does come one final time, even though he was told not to. And he says, here's the deal, Pharaoh. If you don't let my people go, then the firstborn child of every one of the Egyptians will die. And in a patriarchal society where lineage and heritage and what you're passing down is attached to the firstborn, this is a death blow. In every instance of the phrase. And Pharaoh goes, get out of here. The Israelites go and put the blood of the lamb, which is this beautiful portrayal and foreshadowing of Jesus Christ and what he did for us. And the death angel passes over all the Israelites who have this blood across their homes. But the Egyptians aren't so lucky. And it says it even happened to the livestock, that they lost their firstborns. And there was wailing in all of Egypt. And when Moses returned, Pharaoh goes, just go. Just go. Your God is mighty, he's big. Take all this stuff with you too. And he gives him all these kind of provisions. Says, just get out of here. As we'll see next week play out, they even try to get over and out of Dodge, but Pharaoh changes his mind again, and he crosses over to find him and get him, and Moses parts the sea, and then they walk through it, and then it comes down on Pharaoh, and we see all these instances of how this story keeps moving, and a big God does big things for very little insignificant people. And our final point is simply this. God's plan becomes clear with time and obedience. Now, the beauty of Moses is even though he struggled with self-doubt, even though he constantly fell prey to his insecurities, just like you and just like me, one thing that was a characteristic of him throughout all that is he continued to remain obedient. He would continue to go back to Pharaoh. He would continue to do these things, even though he saw nothing coming of it, only bad stuff, and only his people getting hurt, only his people hating on him and not wanting to have anything to do with him. But he kept going back and being faithful. And even though he wanted it to happen after plague 1, it took 10 plagues before God's timing came to fruition. His plan becomes clear. His timing with obedience. If we trust God and are obedient to his calling, then in his timing we will see his plan fulfilled. And we landed the plane just smack dab in God's plan being fulfilled. But here's the issue with that. That plan, the fulfillment of it, the seeing God fulfilled, God knows all of this, okay? We know this. He knows it all in advance, but you and I don't get to see the preview. We don't know that the good guys win in the end for your and my narrative. We sit back and we hope and we try to extend trust and we have faith, but we just don't know. It takes time. And it takes obedience and patience in the midst of all of that. So if you want to see God do beyond anything you can imagine, if you want to see his plan, I can promise you Moses did not see any of that happening through him. That he was going to perform all these miracles. He was going to lead an entire nation out from under oppression. He was past that. He was past his prime. There was not a time that was not supposed to be his story in his mind. And he had every excuse in the book. But in God's timing, and with Moses being obedient to his calling, it was brought to completion. Moses got to look back on that and see everything that God had done. Now, here's the beauty of it. We'll see this as the narrative continues. It doesn't all of a sudden get perfect for Moses, though. He's still got many things he's going to have to trudge through and figure out in this narrative and this path God has him on. But the God of the universe is with him through it all. And so the question is, are you going to step into that? Because I can promise you, if you will, and if you'll trust in his plan, it'll be far more than you could ever dream. Let's pray. Father in heaven, I thank you that you are a God who saw fit to love me enough to send your son to die for me. That you had a plan in place for my sin and my failures. That you knew that it was great and beyond anything I could possibly put together. I'm thankful that that's what you have for my own life, for my family's life. I thank you that it's yours for our church and for the people here. And my prayer is that you will do amazing and abundant things in and through each of them. And that we will be faithful and obedient to wait to see your plan fulfilled in our lives. It's your name we pray. Amen.